If you hadn't noticed, I'm kind of a fan of Stratocaster style guitars, and one of them in my collection is this uncommon Agile 7-string. I bought it secondhand originally with this clear gloss body, but playing around with it for a while, I realized there was one thing I didn't like about it. It has your typical standard American Stratocaster style body, but I had grown used to the lighter, thinner, economy Squire Stratocaster bodies. So before this channel even started, I took it upon myself to mod a 6-string Squire body to fit the 7-string neck, pickguard, and pickups. But when it came to the bridge, I was too afraid to take on the challenge of routing out an entire tremolo cavity back then. Installing string ferrules with a newly bought string-through bridge did turn out questionable on its own. But now with this channel and some experience under my belt, I've decided to go ahead and go for it already. How nuanced could this fix-up/upgrade really be? This is Kevin from Said Too Much. Removing everything from the body, I measured and marked out where the tremolo bridge should sit, using outline marks from the fixed bridge, and moved on to marking where the tremolo block hole would be from there. Now with all the crude routing I've usually been doing, I considered finally buying an actual router for this. But then I thought, hey, part of the charm of these videos is how DIY and bootstrap they are. It's not like I'm buying an actual template for this project either. So at least trying a new tactic of using a piece of scrap wood clamped to the body as a guide, I used the simple Dremel again to route. Obviously you can see the thin routing bit still likes to wiggle around a little and make some minor grooves rather than a flat vertical surface, even when guided in a straight line, but it'll work. Now I'd been using masking tape to pencil in lines and marks that wouldn't have shown up on the black finish, but when I paused routing to see where the bridge and tremolo block would line up, I thoughtlessly removed it. So I had to mark everything out again, using the original 6-string fixed bridge that I thankfully could still see mounting holes for to use as a reference. Then I double checked that the strings would line up perfectly over the pickup poles and be able to intonate properly. This may have ended up being a blessing in disguise actually, because the tape could have shifted or wrinkled during routing in hindsight. Going back to tools, I did officially concede and at least bought a cheap drill block to help me drill the pilot holes for the 7 pivot point screws perfectly down. This is actually the part I was most worried about, because it'll determine if the bridge will move at all, and if I don't get it right the first time, it's not going to lend itself to an easy do-over. I've regretted some crooked drilling in the past, so I caved, and it was well worth it. With the bridge in its appropriate place, I flipped everything over and eyeballed where a spring cavity should go symmetrically to the tremolo block, then took it all out again to go back to routing. Starting shallow at first, but eventually trying to match the depth of the Agile cavity, I quickly found myself breaking through to the other side in alarm. I forgot how much thinner the Squire body was, and its original 6-string pickup routing didn't shy away from some generous depths itself. But I remembered my baritone also has a Squire body the same thickness, but with a routed tremolo cavity also. So screwing it open, you see how its design has a much more shallow and narrow cavity, benefiting from a bridge with one less string albeit. I don't know why I didn't think to use this as a reference, but problem solving some oversights is part of the fun of these, right? Routing as much depth as I would need to at least clear the springs and spring claw into the cavity, I then installed the screws holding them, just barely revealing marks on the other side where they would have come through. And before I finally put away the Dremel, I routed out just a little extra room for the tremolo block to tilt further back. Soldering a new ground wire to the spring claw, reinstalling everything, and stringing it up, it all seems to work. The tremolo cavity looks a little chewed up maybe, but the springs coming in contact with the surface of the wood actually helps mute any resonance you sometimes get from them. And if the cavity is just too hideous for you, I also designed and 3D printed a new cover anyway, that even offers a bit more room for the strings if they need it. But the most important thing here is function over form, so maybe we need to play around with it a little bit to see just how well it works. So what do you guys think? Was this 7-string given a well worth it upgrade? Or do you prefer fixed bridges over tremolo bridges? I'll confess I've actually removed all of the tremolo arms from any of my guitars with tremolo bridges. I don't really play employing whammy techniques that much, and with how often I rotate guitars on my main guitar rack, it's just easier to move them around and in and out of cases without it. But I like to know that it's there if I want it. Dive bombs are super fun. All of them are in a dive-only mode in fact too, if not just purely because of how often I set up different tunings on them. I don't have the patience to set up a floating system every time, and this particular routing and bridge type makes it easy to just tighten the springs and keep everything static against the body, without changing any tunings. The Floyd Rose on my 8-string, I've just blocked off altogether. Don't get me started on it. It's probably one of the most stable tremolo systems once you get it set up perfect, but that is a lot of work. So what are some of your experiences with tremolo bridges? Maybe you've been reassured to try an ambitious upgrade of your own, or have a few ideas for me to try. Fun fact, the body is actually from the first guitar I ever had, and I'm happy to have an excuse to revisit it since it's pretty much part of the origin of this channel. So here's to the future, with a little help from you all liking, commenting, and sharing. For now though, enough said. For early video access, raw instrument tracks, and more exclusives, find our community on Patreon and consider adding your support.
Said too much.